If Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius were here today, looking at a man who closes the tab and feels ashamed right after, what would they say? Probably something simple and direct. That's not freedom. It's a chain. You know this weight perfectly. The screen goes dark, the body goes limp. The mind becomes clouded, confidence vanishes like smoke. For a few minutes it seemed like pleasure. Then comes the existential emptiness and the cutting feeling that you have betrayed yourself again. But here's something that should shock you. The same men who built the greatest empire in history, who faced wars, plagues, and the collapse of civilizations, fought the exact same battle you are fighting now. The difference is that they discovered something you haven't discovered yet: how to turn this struggle into a definitive victory. On day 3, the conversation is about this: how Stoic philosophy, tested on real battlefields, forged in real prisons, refined through 2,000 years of men facing their own demons, can help you escape this invisible prison that has kept you trapped for years. No pretty speech, no philosophical pose, no romanticization of pain. Because here's the brutal truth. You can continue fighting this addiction with the same weak strategies you've already tried dozens of times. Willpower. I just won't do it anymore. This time it will be different. Or you can learn from men who really understood what it means to master yourself when the whole world is falling apart around you. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire in the world, but his personal notes don't talk about military conquests. They talk about the daily struggle to control his own impulses, to not get carried away by what is easy, to choose what is right, even when he didn't feel like it at all. Epictetus was born a slave, but he became the freest man of his time because he discovered a truth that 99% of men never understand. External chains are nothing compared to the chains you put on your own mind. And if these men, facing challenges that would make any of us crumble, managed to create practical systems to govern their desires, why couldn't you? The answer is simple: because no one taught you how to use these tools. No one translated this ancient wisdom into the modern war you are fighting inside your own room. Today's theme is crystal clear. Apply principles tested for 2,000 years to NoFap, now, today, in the next 24 hours. Let's translate philosophy into action. Master desire when it tries to control you, put pleasure in the place of a servant instead of letting it on the throne, and use reason, not emotion, not impulse, to decide each next step of your life. The Stoics never promised it would be comfortable. They never lied saying it would be easy. They taught something much more valuable: how to do what is right even when you don't feel like it at all, even when every fiber of your being is screaming to do the opposite. This fits perfectly into your situation now. You don't need a miracle. You don't need superpowers. You don't need a completely new personality. You need a tested method and disciplined repetition. What you can expect from the next few minutes: first, understand why quick pleasure not only doesn't satisfy, but actively weakens your ability to feel real satisfaction. Second, learn to see willpower for what it really is: an impulse that passes through your mind, not an order you are obliged to obey. Third, put together a simple and brutal Stoic plan to get through the next 24 hours without negotiating, without half measures, without just this once. No incomprehensible philosophical jargon. No Latin quotes that sound pretty but don't change anything in practice. It's a direct and honest conversation about real discipline, purpose that sustains when motivation runs out, and inner freedom that no one can take away from you, not even yourself in your weakest moments. And here's something crucial: if you've reached the 3rd day, you've already proven something that most men never manage to prove. You've proven that change is possible, that you are not condemned to repeat the same cycle forever, that there is within you a force that can say no, even when yes seems inevitable. But now comes the real test. Because day 3 is where many men make the fatal mistake. They start to relax. They start to think they've already been through the worst. They start to negotiate. And that's exactly when the addiction attacks with everything, because it knows they've lowered their guard. If this makes sense to you, if you recognize that you need something more solid than momentary motivation, sign up now and follow each episode of this series. And leave your testimony in the comments. Write what day you are on, because addiction hates when the fight stops being a secret, when you come out of isolation and connect with a brotherhood of men facing the same war. Today you will learn that freedom is not doing everything you want. Freedom is having the power to choose when the will screams, and the Stoics will teach you exactly how to conquer that power. Stoicism in a few words. Stoicism, without complication, is living according to reason and reality. You don't control what appears in front of you, but you control how you respond. Does the will come, you feel it, recognize it, and choose. For the Stoics, discipline is not prison. It is the ability to decide what to do, even when emotion pushes in the opposite direction. That is practical freedom. Epictetus said that we are not disturbed by facts, but by the judgment we make of them. The fact, the trigger, appeared. The bad judgment, if I felt it, I need to obey. This is where philosophy comes in. You change the judgment. Feeling doesn't force me to act. I can stay and breathe. I can get up and change the environment. I can close the tab and follow the plan. The mind learns from repeated evidence. Each right decision reinforces the path. Living according to nature is also respecting how the brain works. The dopamine from infinite stimulus messes up the reward system. Real life rewards effort, patience, and presence. When you show up every day for what matters, work, study, training, relationships, the balance returns. The Stoic doesn't run away from life. He takes on what is his and walks one day at a time. Desire as an invisible chain. Epictetus was direct. No one is free while they are a slave to desires. Replace desires here with pornography, and the sentence still applies. Addiction acts like an invisible chain. It doesn't mark the skin, but it traps the mind. You promise to stop, break the promise, feel smaller, and the cycle starts again. That is slavery, not being able to say no to something that weakens you. Pornography convinces you that freedom is doing what you want, but real freedom is being able to refuse what pulls you down. Pleasure, when it becomes master, dismantles discipline, steals energy, and cracks self-esteem. When it returns to being a servant, it occupies the right place and leaves room for purpose. The Stoics called this self-mastery. You don't eliminate desire, you govern it. In practice, each no is a file on the bars. It doesn't break everything at once, but it thins the iron day after day. When the image comes to mind, instead of negotiating, change the body. Sit up straight, get up, wash your face. Look away from the screen. Posture helps the mind remember who decides. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be constant. Today, you close. Tomorrow, continue. Marcus Aurelius and self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire in the world, but he never deceived himself. He said that the most difficult part of governing was himself. It wasn't the borders of Rome, it wasn't the external enemies, it was his own mind. He wrote to himself in silence, "Don't let yourself be dragged down by fleeting pleasures." Now think, if even an emperor with power, women, parties, battles won, knew that pleasure could be a trap, what would he say about someone addicted to pornography in 2025? He would say what he always said, pleasure that comes easy weakens, because the mind accustomed to quick rewards becomes lazy, fragile, soft. Pornography is exactly that pleasure that Marcus Aurelius warned about. It seems small, but it corrodes the soul. There is nothing harmless about wasting your energy in a click. He would say, you were born for great things, and you are contenting yourself with shadows on the screen. What Marcus Aurelius teaches us is simple. You only have real power when you can say no to immediate pleasure. Because life is not made of what you grab running. Life is built in the long term. So every time you feel the temptation, remember, you are not a slave to the screen. You are the emperor of your own mind. The battlefield is inside, and each resisted impulse is conquered territory. Seneca and the dangers of excess. Seneca looked at Roman life full of banquets, drinks, and games and saw a pattern. The more someone indulged in excess, the emptier they became. He said that living chasing pleasure was living chasing wind. It never satisfies. It is never enough. Pornography is the modern version of this endless race. The problem is not just pleasure itself, but the infinite repetition. Each video promises something new, but always delivers the same shallow sensation. The brain asks for more, you deliver more, and the soul becomes weaker. Seneca already said, "Whoever seeks too much never finds peace." It is the eagerness for the next click that transforms a habit into a chain. Excess steals the taste of simple things. Whoever drowns in stimuli doesn't feel flavor in the real. It's the guy who can't enjoy a conversation, doesn't feel pleasure in a walk, doesn't value a hug. Because the mind is calibrated for exaggeration, and exaggeration kills natural pleasure. Seneca's criticism is valid here. Pleasure without measure becomes poison. Infinite pornography doesn't nourish, it only exhausts. You believe you are satisfying yourself, but you are only spending vital energy on something that builds nothing. Look at the excess and see the trap. What seems like abundance is, in reality, waste. Cutting the exaggeration is recovering space for what really matters. Discipline as true freedom. The Stoics knew, discipline is not prison, it is liberation. Whoever does everything they want is not free, they are a slave to desire. Real freedom is being able to say no and stay firm. When you choose not to click, even with the will, you are not depriving yourself of pleasure. You are giving yourself the gift of autonomy. Think about it. When was the last time you felt in total control of yourself? Maybe it's been a while. Maybe pornography has convinced you that resisting is impossible, but every time you hold back the impulse, you show that the power is still yours. And that power grows with each repetition. Discipline is not glamour. There are no applause, there is no medal. It's you alone doing what you know needs to be done. It's getting up even tired, it's closing the tab even with the will. It's following the plan even when the mind tries to negotiate. The Stoics called this virtue living according to what is right, not what is easy. When you face discipline as a tool of freedom, the fight changes color. You are no longer a slave trying to hold on. You are a man forging his strength. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is training. Each difficult decision is a weight lifted in the gym of the soul. So remember, the discipline that hurts today is the freedom that will guide you tomorrow. Pornography promises freedom, but it imprisons. The no you say now is the key that opens the cell. The control of the body by the mind, the body asks, the mind governs. That is the key phrase. It has always been like that. The problem is that when you give in to addiction, this order is reversed. The body asks and the mind obeys as a servant. You know this in practice. How many times were you not tired, busy with other things to do, but dropped everything because the body sent that impulse? This inversion is the root of slavery. The Stoics knew that the mind needs to be commander, not subject. Epictetus said that you don't control the events, but you control yourself. And the yourself includes precisely these desires. It is accepting that the body will ask, will beg, will create justifications, but the final decision has to come from reason. Look at pornography as a perfect exercise of this principle. The body asks for immediate relief, but the mind can respond, you don't command here. It's like a father educating a small child. The child cries, wants candy before dinner. The firm father doesn't give in because he knows what is best. At the moment it may seem harsh, but in the long term it is what builds health. Your mind needs to occupy that father role. When you let the body command, life falls into disorder. It's the guy who doesn't train because he prefers to sleep. It's the one who doesn't study because he prefers to scroll the screen. It's the one who doesn't build anything because he is always running after immediate relief. The body never thinks about the future. It only thinks about the now. The mind has the ability to see ahead. And that's where freedom lies. Controlling the body doesn't mean ignoring needs. Eating, resting, having fun, all of that is natural. The problem is when the ruler gets crooked and the body starts asking for always more than it needs. Pornography distorts this ruler. You're not just responding to the normal sexual instinct. You are addicted to an artificial, infinite, cheap version. And the brain gets used to this as if it were the standard. But remember, discipline is not becoming stone. It is not eliminating desire. It is governing it. The desire will appear and you will feel it. But feeling is not obeying. Feeling is just information. The problem is when you believe that, if I feel, I need to act. That is the mistake. So the next time the impulse comes, don't fight against it as if it were a monster. see it as a request from the body. Recognize, okay, you are asking, and then respond firmly, but I decide. Just that change of posture is enough to put the mind back on the throne. The body asks, the mind governs. Remember that. How to deal with relapses under a Stoic view. One of the greatest pains in this journey is relapse. The guy falls and immediately thinks, I ruined everything, it's no use anymore, I'm too weak. And that's exactly where many give up. But the Stoics had another view. For them, virtue was not absolute perfection. It was constancy. It was getting up every time you fell. Epictetus taught that it is not the fall itself that matters, but what you do after it. Falling is human, remaining fallen is a choice. That changes everything. Because instead of looking at the relapse as a final sentence, you start to see it as part of the battle. No soldier goes through the war without cuts and scars. What differentiates the warrior from the coward is not never falling, but always getting up. In NoFap, this is vital, because the mind loves to turn a slip into an excuse to give up. I already fell, so it's no use anymore. That phrase is pure poison. Stoic philosophy breaks that poison. It teaches, if you fell, get up now, not tomorrow, not later, now. The time you spend lamenting could be used to rebuild yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that perfection is not required of us. What is required is continuous effort. If even an emperor accepted his humanity, why should you demand something impossible from yourself? The real failure is not falling, but giving up trying. Look at the relapse as a cruel but necessary teacher. It shows where you are still vulnerable. It shows in which moments you still need to create barriers, adjust routines, strengthen habits. Each fall brings precious information. If you use that information, you grow. If you only blame yourself, you weaken yourself. And remember, every time you get up, your mind learns that you don't give up easily. Even if you fall 10 times, each restart is a resilience training. Of course, no one should use this as an excuse to live falling, but if it happens, let it be transformed into fuel. The Stoics didn't romanticize weakness, but they also didn't accept giving up. They knew that life is a constant training field. Virtue is in the repetition of the right choice, even after making a mistake. So the next time you fall, change the question, why am I so weak? To what did this fall teach me? If you answer that with action, you've already won more than you imagine. Virtue above pleasure. For the Stoics, the supreme good was not wealth, fame, or pleasure. It was virtue. Living with virtue meant living aligned with what is right, with reason, with purpose. Pleasure for them was not evil in itself, but it became destructive when it started to govern life. Now think about pornography. What does it offer? Immediate pleasure, that's it. But when it becomes a habit, it starts to dictate the rhythm of your life. You study less, work less, relate worse, lose energy, lose confidence. That is the portrait of pleasure governing and destroying virtue. Seneca said that no pleasure is worth it if it costs freedom. Pornography costs exactly that, your freedom to choose, because when you can't say no, you are no longer master of yourself. Pleasure has become master, and you have become a servant. Virtue, on the other hand, builds. When you act with discipline, with self-control, when you choose what is right instead of what is easy, you plant seeds of strength that blossom in all areas of life. At work, in studies, in relationships, in the way you look at yourself in the mirror. This is where NoFap stops being just about quitting a habit. It becomes a path of virtue. Each no that you say to pornography is a yes to discipline, to energy, to clarity, to your own dignity. It is virtue overlapping cheap pleasure. Virtue also gives something that pleasure can never give: peace. Pleasure always charges more. It is never satisfied. Virtue, when practiced, brings calm because you know you are living aligned with your principles. You look at yourself and feel self-respect. And that respect is a force that no click can offer. Ask yourself, what do you want to be remembered for living? For the moments of hidden pleasure that evaporate in seconds, or for the discipline that built a solid life, for the strength that inspired others, for the freedom that you conquered? The Stoics would choose the second option without hesitating, and that choice is before you every day. The inner battle as a Stoic workout. Every resisted impulse is a workout. It may seem small, but in practice it's like a soldier who gets stronger with each combat. The Stoics were clear about this. It is not the peaceful life that builds character. It is the difficult life. Pornography, in this sense, has become the modern battlefield. There is no sword, no shield, but the fight is real, and it happens inside your mind every day. Think about it. If you overcome a temptation now, you haven't just won this minute. You have gained resistance for the next one. The brain learns with repetition. Every time you refuse a click, you strengthen the connection of discipline. It's like a muscle being trained. In the beginning, it hurts. It seems like you won't be able to handle it, but each set done makes you stronger. The Stoics saw every difficulty as a training of the soul. The man who conquers himself is stronger than he who conquers 1,000 enemies, said a proverb repeated by many philosophers. This applies directly to NoFap. Because the fight is not against the internet, nor against the temptations of the world. It is against yourself, against your poorly trained instincts, against the associations that have been created inside your brain. That's why it's worth facing each day without pornography as training. You are not just surviving. You are practicing self-control. You are strengthening something invisible but powerful. Because the man who learns to control this impulse is the same one who can control anger, procrastination, discouragement. The training extends to all areas of life. The inner battle also brings clarity about what really matters. When you realize that pornography is just a shallow, immediate, and empty pleasure, you begin to value deeper pleasures, a sincere conversation, a personal achievement, a true relationship. The training of the soul shows you that life has more to offer than a few minutes of anesthesia. And just like in physical training, there will be days of pain and days of progress. There will be days when you will fall, but each fall is also part of it. The warrior is not measured by the number of times he falls, but by the number of times he gets up. This is the Stoic mentality. Each obstacle is part of the training, not a deviation from the path. Face NoFap like this, not as a prison, but as a mental gym. Each impulse is a weight to be lifted. Each victory is a well-done repetition, and over time, the mind strengthens to the point of transforming the battle into a daily victory. The example of the ancients for the modern man. It may seem strange to bring philosophers from 2,000 years ago to talk about pornography, but the truth is that, although the addiction is modern, the principles are timeless. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, none of them knew the internet, but they all knew the dangers of uncontrolled desire, and they all knew that man needs to learn to master his impulses if he wants to be truly free. Imagine Epictetus, who was born a slave and still spoke of freedom. For him, being free had nothing to do with chains on the body, but with chains in the mind. A man could be in a cell and still be free if he could master himself. Now think, how many men today live in comfortable houses with fast internet, but are slaves to a habit they can't quit? What Epictetus would say is simple. Slavery has changed its form, but it still exists. Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire on earth, but spent his nights writing reminders to himself. Do not let yourself be dominated by pleasure, nor by fear, nor by anger. He knew that it was no use commanding armies if he could not command his own soul. It's the same logic today. What good is it to have success at work, money in your pocket, an appearance of strength, if at night you drag yourself back to pornography and wake up the next day weaker? Seneca, advisor to emperors, said that excess always takes its toll. For him, the wise man does not reject pleasure, but also does not let himself be dominated by it. Pleasure has its place, but it should never occupy the throne. This vision is direct for the modern man. It is not about eliminating sex or desire, but about putting it back in the right place. Pleasure should be a servant, not a master. The ancients had no screen, but they had clarity. They knew that the main fight has always been against one's own interior, and if they were here today, they would probably look at the addiction to pornography and say, "This is the battlefield of your generation." The enemy is not in the barbarians out there, but inside your room, in the palm of your hand. What changes is the scenario. What remains is the truth. Man is only strong when he governs himself. Stoic strategies applied to NoFap philosophy is only worth it when it turns into practice. The Stoics were never just about talking pretty. They wrote daily reminders to themselves, applied mental exercises, tested discipline in their routine. And it is here that we can translate Stoicism into direct tools for NoFap. First, journaling, writing. Marcus Aurelius left the Meditations, which were actually personal notes, not books for the public. It was him talking to himself, reinforcing discipline, reminding himself of his weaknesses. You can do the same. Every day, write down what you felt, where you almost fell, what you overcame. It doesn't have to be long or pretty. Just be sincere. This practice gives you clarity and reinforces the identity of who is in control. Second, rational pause. The Stoics believed that between stimulus and reaction, there is a space. It is in this space that freedom lives. When you feel the impulse, do not react immediately. Stop. Breathe. Ask, does this bring me closer or further away from the life I want? This fraction of seconds can be what separates relapse from victory. Third, memento mori. Remember death. For the Stoics, remembering that life is finite brought urgency and clarity. Now think, how many years have you already lost trapped in this habit? How many days of energy? How many nights of confidence? How many projects have been left behind? When temptation appears, ask, if today were my last day, is this how I would choose to live it? This question cuts through the illusion of momentary pleasure. These three practices, writing, pausing, remembering death, may seem simple, but they are powerful weapons against an enemy that feeds precisely on the lack of awareness. Pornography thrives on autopilot. Stoicism teaches you to take back the wheel. And more. Every time you practice these strategies, you are not just resisting addiction. You are training the mind for everything. Journaling strengthens clarity in all areas. The rational pause helps in day-to-day decisions. Memento mori gives meaning to your choices. What begins as a tool against pornography becomes a philosophy of life. This is the true power of Stoicism, transforming every moment into training. And if you apply this to NoFap, you will realize that you are not just saying no to a habit. You are saying yes to a whole life of discipline and purpose. Call to wisdom. We have reached a point that separates those who are just trying to stop from those who will really change their lives. Up to here, you have heard about symptoms, philosophy, discipline, but all this needs to be transformed into something bigger, wisdom. Because if the fight against pornography is just a blind effort to hold back will, sooner or later, you will fall. But if this fight is understood as part of a broader lifestyle, as a philosophy, as a construction of who you are, then it becomes unbreakable. The Stoics always taught that virtue, living according to reason and nature, is the supreme good. Translating, it is not pleasure that should govern you, but rather the clarity of living as an upright man, guided by what really matters. Pornography is the opposite of that. It hijacks your reason, distorts your view of life, and weakens your body and mind. Living enslaved to this habit is living far from virtue. When Epictetus said that no one is free while he is a slave to desires, he was not speaking of theory. He knew literal, physical slavery. But what marked him the most was inner slavery, because it is no use walking the streets with broken chains if inside you are still imprisoned by invisible chains. And this is the slavery of modern man. Screens that imprison, cheap pleasures that dominate, desires that dictate every step. Wisdom in this context is understanding that resisting is not just saying no to a video. It is saying yes to a whole life of freedom. It is remembering that each decision to resist is a step out of slavery. That each night in which you do not give in is a broken chain. That each morning in which you wake up without guilt is a piece of ground recovered. Seneca wrote that time is the most precious asset we have, and that wasting it on trivialities is the biggest mistake of all. Now reflect. How many hours, how many days, how many years have you already given to pornography? Hours that could have been used to grow, learn, love, work, create. If you had used that time on something productive, where would you be today? This reflection hurts, but the pain of truth is the beginning of wisdom, and wisdom calls you to change your perspective. It is not just about enduring discomfort. It is about seeing discomfort as a tool for growth. It is about interpreting the symptoms not as punishment, but as training. It is about using each temptation as a reminder of who you no longer want to be. Cheap pleasure is the shortcut. Wisdom is the long path. But only the long path leads to a destination that is worthwhile. Here also comes the practical vision, transforming NoFap into a lifestyle. It is not a 30-day challenge. It is not a 90-day goal. It is a daily choice, repeated until it becomes identity. You are not just counting days. You are becoming a disciplined man, the kind of man who inspires respect, who lives without shame, who conquers for real. Stoic wisdom reminds you that you do not control the world, but you control your actions. You do not control if you will feel like it today, but you control if you will give in. You do not control if the impulse appears, but you control if you give space for it to grow. This is the essence. Put the energy into what depends on you. The rest, you accept. So the call to wisdom is this. Do not fight only with brute force. Fight with clarity. Remember that resisting pornography is not a punishment, it is a privilege. Because every time you resist, you prove to yourself that you are the master of your mind. And that power is greater than any momentary pleasure could give. In the end, it is not just about being disciplined, it is about being wise. It is about living in a way that, if Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius were alive today, they would look at you and say, "This one understood." The conversation in the early morning. Maybe you are watching this in the early morning, in the dark, trying to hold back an impulse. Maybe you opened your cell phone or computer without even thinking, almost automatically. And for some reason, you fell on this video before falling on another. I know how it is. I know what it's like to look at the screen feeling that your whole mind is asking for that quick relief, that easy discharge that seems to solve everything. I know the weight of being alone with that desire burning inside. But it is here, exactly here, that you need to choose. This is the crossroads. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. It is when the body screams, when the mind invents excuses, when loneliness tightens, that you define who you really are. Because anyone can talk about discipline during the day, when they are busy, when they are surrounded by people. But the real test is this: the silent early morning, the screen shining, the impulse almost dragging you. It is in this moment that free men and enslaved men are formed. And I don't say this to condemn you. I say it because I know the strength of this temptation. I know it's no joke. It's not just will or weakness. It's chemistry, it's habit, it's addiction. But I also know that you are not just chemistry. You are not just habit. You are more. There is something inside you that addiction cannot kill, the spark that seeks freedom, that wants to be the master of itself. It is this part that needs to wake up now. Maybe you think, "But I have already fallen so many times, why would it be different this time?" I answer, because this time you are aware. You are hearing these words. You are realizing that the impulse is not you, it is just a noise inside you. And noises can be ignored. The question is not how many times you have fallen, but how many times you are still willing to get up. So I am going to ask you a simple thing. Before closing this video, decide. You don't need to swear 90 days, you don't need to promise a year. Just decide that today, now, you will not give in. Only today. Only this early morning. Say to yourself, "Tomorrow I will deal with tomorrow. Today I close." That is all you need. A small but firm decision, repeated day after day until it becomes who you are. And if you listen to me now and resist, you will wake up tomorrow with a different feeling. You may still be tired, you may still feel the weight of the crash, but inside you will have a spark. A small flame saying, "I managed to resist." And that flame, if it is fed, becomes fire. And fire is what burns the chains that bind you. So if it is early morning, if you are in the dark, if the desire hits, take a deep breath, remember these words. The impulse does not command you. The choice is yours. And today, you choose to be free. And here we end the third day of the journey. Perhaps you have arrived here completely exhausted, carrying the weight of each hour of resistance as if it were a mountain on your back. Perhaps you have arrived with a growing pride, feeling for the first time in years that you can really change. Perhaps you are exactly on the razor's edge between continuing and giving up, with one part of you screaming to move forward and another whispering that you have gone too far, that it is time to return to what is familiar. But regardless of how you arrived at this moment, regardless of what you are feeling now, I need you to leave this video with something absolutely crystal clear engraved in your mind. You are not just trying to quit an inconvenient habit. You are not just doing a digital diet. You are literally building a new identity, forging a new version of yourself, cell by cell, decision by decision, day after day. If the Stoics were here in this room, looking directly into your eyes, they would say something that should echo in your soul. It is not pornography that you should fear, but the slavery of your own mind. This phrase carries the full weight of 2,000 years of wisdom, tested in real battlefields, refined in literal prisons, proven by men who faced death and chose inner freedom even when everything around them collapsed. The real danger was never the screen itself, never the pixels or the algorithms. The real danger is handing over the steering wheel of your life to impulses. It is letting cheap pleasure dictate your most fundamental choices. It is living as a servant of your own desires when you were born to be their master. The slavery of the mind is the cruelest of all slaveries because it is invisible, because it deceives, because it convinces you that you are in control exactly when you are most dominated. But here is the truth that can change your whole life. The opposite is also true. The freedom of the mind is the most powerful of all freedoms. When you truly govern yourself, when your choices come from reason and not from impulse, when you are guided by what is right and not by what is easy, then nothing, absolutely nothing, from the outside can dominate you. Neither circumstances, nor people, nor addictions, nor temporary failures. And that is exactly what you are starting to conquer right now. It's not easy. No one promised it would be. It's not fast, and real transformation never is, but it's real, it's measurable, it's solid. Each day of resistance is not just a number in a count. It is one more stone placed on the wall of your freedom, one more brick in the fortress of your dignity. You need to understand something fundamental about this moment. You are no longer the same person you were 3 days ago. That man who started this journey, who may have started doubting that he could spend even 24 hours, that man no longer exists. In his place is someone who has proven to himself that change is possible, that discipline can be developed, that chains can be broken. Now is the time to take action that will solidify this transformation. Subscribe to this channel right now, because this series is not a collection of isolated videos that you can watch when you feel like it. It is a carefully structured protocol, a complete 90-day journey, where each chapter will give you more clarity about who you are becoming, more tools to face the next challenges, and more strength for when the difficult moments arrive. And they will arrive. And leave in the comments a word that will be much more than text on the screen. It will be your public commitment, your flag planted on the battlefield. Discipline. Write that, because when you write, when you make it visible, you transform abstract thought into concrete action. You take a vague intention and transform it into tangible reality. And concrete action is what changes destiny. But this is not just about you. When you comment, when you expose yourself, when you come out of anonymity and publicly assume your struggle, you are strengthening other men who are reading this exact moment, who may be at the absolute limit of giving up, who need to see that they are not alone in this war. Addiction hates witnesses. Addiction thrives on secrecy, shame, isolation. The more public your commitment, the more connected you are with other warriors, the stronger your position becomes. Today you discovered truths that most men never discover. You understood that desire, when it governs, becomes an invisible chain that binds more than any physical handcuff. You saw that fleeting pleasure not only does not satisfy, but actively weakens your ability to find lasting satisfaction. You learned that excess is not abundance, but waste that steals your vitality. And more importantly, you understood that discipline is not prison, but true freedom. The ability to choose your path instead of being dragged by circumstances. You saw that each relapse can be transformed into learning if you have the humility to extract the lesson. You discovered that virtue, living according to your highest values, is infinitely greater than any momentary pleasure. You realize that the inner battle you are fighting is not just about pornography, but is training for all the other challenges that life will present. And you understood that Stoic philosophy, forged 2,000 years ago, is more current and necessary today than ever, because the fundamental challenges of human nature are eternal. Now, in the face of everything you have learned, there remains a choice that will define not only the next few days, but potentially the rest of your life. Continue in the cycle that weakens you, that diminishes you, that steals your energy and dignity, or walk firm and resolute towards the freedom that awaits you on the other side of this struggle. And that choice is not an abstract decision to be made someday. It's not something to think about tomorrow or next week. It's now. It's in this moment. Because the next impulse will arrive. It could be in an hour, it could be tomorrow morning, it could be next weekend, when you are alone and vulnerable. And in that crucial moment, when temptation is whispering in your ear, when addiction is offering temporary relief in exchange for your permanent dignity, you will remember the fundamental question. What would the Stoics say? They would say that it is not pleasure that defines the character of a man, but the virtue that he chooses to cultivate. They would say that it is not desire that should occupy the throne of life, but that it should be placed in its proper place as a servant. They would say that each battle won within oneself, no matter how small it may seem, is worth more than any external victory that you can conquer in the world. So take a deep breath in this moment, feel the weight of the decision you are making, and keep this phrase as your war flag, as your battle cry. Today I do not give in. Today I am the master of myself. Not tomorrow, not after you feel stronger. Today, now, in this moment. Tomorrow, you come back here for the next chapter of this journey, and with each day that passes, a new victory will be added to the previous one, creating a momentum that will become practically unstoppable. Each resistance will strengthen the next. Each correct choice will make the next correct choice easier. This is not just the end of day 3, it is the beginning of a more conscious, more deliberate, stronger, freer walk. Ancient philosophy has found its place in the modern challenge. Wisdom tested in Roman battlefields now serves as a weapon in the war you wage in the silence of your room. And you now are part of this millennial history of men who chose to govern themselves instead of being governed. So march with dignity. Comment, discipline with pride. Subscribe with determination. Come back tomorrow with renewed hope. Because the war continues, the challenges have not ended, but you are no longer alone. You are now part of an invisible brotherhood of men who understood that true freedom begins within oneself. And when you are on day 30, on day 90, when you are living a life that today seems impossible, you will remember this third day as the moment when everything changed, as the day you stopped being just another man trying to stop a habit and became a Stoic warrior forging a new identity. Ancient philosophy lives, eternal wisdom continues to transform lives, and you have just proven that you deserve to be part of this tradition.